Rachel Moore was 34 years old, successful by every measurable standard, and yet she dreaded family gatherings more than any high-stakes client meeting. On the morning of her younger sister's baby shower, she stood in her downtown Chicago loft staring at her reflection, silently negotiating with herself. As an interior designer, confidence was part of her daily uniform, but family had a way of stripping that armor away. After too much deliberation, she chose a blush midi dress, elegant, understated, carefully neutral. The kind of outfit designed not to provoke commentary. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her loft, illuminating a space she had transformed from raw concrete into something warm and intentional, a home that had been featured in design magazines and admired by clients she once only read about. This life was not accidental. Rachel had built it deliberately, brick by brick, while others built families. She wasn't opposed to marriage or children, she simply refused to rush into them for appearances. Still, as she reached for her keys, a familiar knot formed in her chest. Today wasn't about celebrating a new baby. It was about surviving quiet judgments dressed up as concern. Before I continue, I need to ask you for a favor. We're working toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and your support truly makes a difference. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It's completely free. Like this video, and tell me where you're watching from. That single click helps this channel grow and allows me to keep bringing you stories like this. Rachel's phone buzzed with a message from her mother, Linda Moore, reminding her not to forget the gift and noting, unnecessarily, that her sister's registry spanned 4 stores. Rachel glanced at the meticulously wrapped package on her kitchen counter, a high-end baby carrier chosen after hours of research, practical, ergonomic, and expensive. She knew it would be received politely, not warmly. Melissa Grant, her sister, had always moved through life on a path their parents openly admired. Melissa was a pediatrician, married to a surgeon named Jonathan Hale, living in a picture-perfect suburban home, pregnant right on schedule. Rachel, by contrast, was the unspoken question mark. Successful, yes, but not settled. Not traditional. 2 years earlier, she had ended a serious relationship with a man named Kevin Ross when his proposal felt more like a deadline than a promise. Choosing herself had been the right decision, but it came with a quiet cost. As Rachel locked her door and headed for the garage, she rehearsed answers she'd given 100 times before. I'm happy. My work fulfills me. The right person hasn't come yet. All true. All rarely believed. The drive to Rosewood Gardens took 40 minutes, just enough time for Rachel's confidence to erode and rebuild twice. The venue was immaculate, white roses, baby's breath, soft blue accents, and a banner welcoming baby Oliver. It looked like a catalog spread, flawless and carefully curated, just like Melissa liked things. Inside, Linda was already directing caterers with precise efficiency. Her greeting to Rachel was swift, her eyes dropping immediately to the gift. You're late, she said, adjusting Rachel's hair as she had since childhood. Everyone's already here. Rachel offered a calm smile and blamed traffic, though she had circled the block deliberately to delay her entrance. The room buzzed with conversation. Relatives, colleagues, childhood neighbors, all gathered to celebrate Melissa. As Rachel stepped inside, she felt the familiar shift, admiration for her sister, curiosity toward her, concern thinly veiled as small talk. This wasn't hostility. It was worse. It was expectation. The unspoken belief that Rachel's life was incomplete, still waiting to begin. The questions started almost immediately. An aunt asked if there was anyone special. A cousin suggested a divorced friend. Rachel answered politely, redirecting conversations with practiced ease. When she finally reached Melissa, her sister looked radiant, seated like royalty in a pale blue maternity dress. Their exchange was brief and surface level. Melissa accepted the gift with a nod, commenting that it was nice, before moving on. The afternoon unfolded in games and chatter, all centered on motherhood. When it came time to share favorite parenting memories, Rachel stayed silent, busying herself with refilling drinks. She didn't resent the celebration. She resented what it excluded. During the gift opening, her present was acknowledged without enthusiasm, set aside without comment. Rachel smiled through it, though the familiar burn crept into her cheeks. She told herself it didn't matter. She had endured moments like this before. What she didn't expect was what came next, how casually cruelty could be delivered, and how quickly a room could turn quiet. When the toasts began, Rachel offered a short, sincere one, praising her sister's determination and wishing her well. It should have ended there. Instead, Melissa reclaimed the microphone, smiling as she joked about being the younger sister who reached marriage and motherhood first. Laughter rippled unevenly through the room. Then came the comment about Rachel waiting too long, about fertility, about dried-up chances. The silence that followed was heavy and unmistakable. Rachel froze, humiliation spreading through her like heat. Linda rushed to redirect attention, but the damage was done. Eyes lingered, pity mixed with discomfort. Rachel set her glass down carefully and excused herself, her composure cracking only once she reached the garden outside. There, beneath a flowering tree, the tears came, angry, restrained, years in the making. She wasn't crying because she doubted her choices. She was crying because the people who were supposed to love her had turned her life into a joke. And just as she wiped her face and tried to steady herself, a small voice spoke behind her, changing everything. The voice belonged to a little girl standing a few feet away, her expression open and curious rather than intrusive. She had soft brown curls pulled back with a ribbon and wore a yellow cardigan embroidered with tiny butterflies. "Are you okay?" the girl asked gently. Rachel turned, startled, instinctively brushing at her cheeks. "I'm fine," she said, though it wasn't entirely true. "I just needed some air." The girl studied her for a moment, unconvinced. "You look sad," she said. "My dad says it's okay to be sad sometimes." Before Rachel could respond, a man's voice called out the child's name. "Lily." A tall man appeared along the garden path, concern evident as he hurried over. He apologized immediately, explaining that his daughter had wandered off while he was distracted. Rachel assured him Lily hadn't bothered her. The man introduced himself as Daniel Foster, his manner calm and sincere. There was something grounding about him, nothing performative, nothing rushed. Lily, apparently satisfied with the introductions, declared that Rachel just needed someone to talk to. The honesty made Rachel laugh softly despite herself, the tension easing for the first time that afternoon. Daniel handed Rachel a clean handkerchief, an old-fashioned gesture that felt unexpectedly kind. "Parties can be overwhelming," he said, not prying, just acknowledging. Rachel nodded, dabbing at her eyes. Daniel explained that he worked with Melissa at the hospital and had come with Lily because babysitting options had fallen through. Lily corrected him loudly, insisting she wanted to come. Rachel smiled at the exchange. When Daniel suggested heading back inside, Rachel hesitated, then surprised herself by agreeing. She didn't want to re-enter the room alone. As they walked, Lily slipped her hand into Rachel's without asking. Inside, the noise and brightness returned all at once. Melissa noticed them immediately. Her expression shifted when she saw Rachel with Daniel and Lily, calculation flickering behind her smile. Daniel introduced Rachel simply, without explanation, and Lily announced proudly that they were sitting together. The moment was small, but it mattered. Rachel felt it, a subtle shift in how she occupied the room. She wasn't hiding now. She was present, accompanied, and no longer shrinking. Cake was served, cameras flashed, and conversation resumed. Rachel sat beside Daniel and Lily, listening as Lily narrated her dessert choices with authority. Daniel apologized for her chatter, but Rachel shook her head. "I like it," she said honestly. Across the table, Melissa watched, her irritation barely concealed. When Lily accidentally tipped her cup, red punch splashed onto Melissa's dress. The room froze. Lily's face crumpled in panic. Before anyone could react, Rachel was already moving, calmly blotting the fabric and instructing Melissa to rinse it under cold water. Her voice was steady, professional, practiced. Melissa snapped once, then stopped, realizing Rachel knew exactly what she was doing. Daniel watched with quiet admiration as Rachel handled the situation with ease and reassured Lily that accidents happened. When Melissa returned in a changed dress, the stain mostly gone, something in her demeanor softened, just slightly. The party continued, but the balance had shifted. Rachel no longer felt like an afterthought. She felt capable, visible, and oddly calm. As guests began to leave, Daniel approached Rachel again, this time without Lily tugging at his side. "Thank you," he said. "For earlier. And for being kind to her." Rachel smiled. "She's easy to like." He hesitated, then mentioned his house, new, empty, in need of help. He asked if he could call her professionally. Before Rachel could answer, Melissa appeared, redirecting Daniel with a work-related question and steering him toward the exit. Lily lingered behind long enough to whisper, "My dad likes you," before skipping away. Rachel laughed softly, unsure what to make of the flutter in her chest. Later, As Rachel helped clean up, Melissa confronted her in the kitchen. The conversation was sharp, raw, long overdue. Words that had been swallowed for years finally surfaced: resentment, jealousy, misunderstanding. It ended without neat resolution, but with honesty neither sister could take back. Rachel left Rosewood Gardens that evening exhausted but lighter. She had finally said what needed to be said. In the parking lot, she heard her name. Daniel stood beside his car, Lily buckled into the back seat. She had forgotten her cardigan. He asked if Rachel was okay. She gave a half smile and said she would be. Daniel hesitated, then invited her to join them for ice cream. The offer was simple, unassuming, kind. Rachel accepted. At a small neighborhood shop, over mint chocolate chip and chocolate scoops, conversation flowed easily. Daniel spoke about moving after losing his wife 2 years earlier, about learning to rebuild a life that didn't follow the plan. Rachel listened, understanding more than she said. When they parted that night, Daniel texted her the next day about his house. What began as a consultation would slowly become something else. But for now, as Rachel drove home, she felt something new settle in her chest, not hope exactly, but openness. And that was enough. Daniel's call came 2 days later, professional in tone and brief in intent. He wanted help making his house feel lived in, not staged. Rachel agreed to stop by after work, expecting a straightforward consultation. What she found instead was a space that mirrored its owner, orderly but unfinished, functional yet hollow. Family photos were sparse. The walls were bare. Lily darted through the rooms, pointing out where she wanted color and softness, while Daniel listened more than he spoke. Rachel suggested small, intentional changes rather than a full redesign. Over takeout eaten at the kitchen counter after Lily went to bed, conversation drifted naturally. They talked about work frustrations, about learning when to let go of plans that no longer fit. Daniel shared stories of Lily's adjustment to a new city. Rachel spoke about her business, the pressure of expectations, and the quiet fear of being misunderstood. Neither rushed the moment. When Rachel left that night, it felt less like the end of a meeting and more like the beginning of a conversation that wanted to continue. Over the following weeks, their connection deepened in unremarkable but meaningful ways. Rachel returned often, sometimes for work, sometimes for dinner. Lily began leaving drawings on the kitchen table just for her. Together, they planted flowers in the backyard, choosing milkweed for butterflies because Lily insisted it mattered. Daniel never pressured Rachel for more time than she offered. He respected her schedule, her independence, her boundaries. That respect mattered. When Melissa gave birth to a healthy baby boy, Rachel sent flowers and a gift but stayed away, unsure if her presence would help or complicate things. Daniel encouraged her gently, reminding her that distance didn't have to mean detachment. Rachel waited a week before visiting, carrying cautious optimism with her. Holding her nephew for the first time softened something she hadn't realized she'd been guarding. Melissa, tired and vulnerable, apologized quietly. The words weren't perfect, but they were sincere. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a start. Introducing Daniel to her parents happened gradually. First a brief encounter at the hospital, then dinner weeks later. Lily won them over instantly with stories about school and the garden. Linda watched Rachel closely throughout the evening, noticing changes she couldn't ignore. Rachel wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't defending her choices. She was simply herself. When Linda asked later if Rachel was happy, the answer came easily. "I was happy before," Rachel said. "This is just different." The honesty landed. Over time, family conversations shifted. Questions softened. Comparisons faded. Melissa remained competitive in subtle ways, but the sharp edge was gone. Rachel and Daniel continued building something steady, unhurried. They shared quiet mornings, late-night talks, and small traditions Lily eagerly enforced. Rachel didn't move in right away. She needed space to choose, not slide. Daniel understood. He never mistook patience for distance. Spring returned, and with it, change. One evening in the garden, hands dirty from planting, Daniel asked if Rachel had ever considered moving in. He wasn't proposing a timeline, only an invitation. Before Rachel could answer, Lily appeared holding a small velvet box, her face solemn with purpose. Daniel knelt, the moment unplanned but certain. He spoke simply, about second chances, about building a home before realizing he'd found one. When he asked Rachel to marry him, she looked at Lily, at the life they'd already begun sharing, and felt no fear. She said yes without hesitation. The joy was quiet, complete. No rush. No performance. Just certainty. Lily celebrated immediately by asking to be the flower girl and requesting a puppy. Daniel laughed and promised one miracle at a time. Rachel slipped the ring on her finger and felt something settle into place, not completion, but alignment. A year later, Rachel stood in Melissa's backyard watching Lily chase her nephew across the grass. Daniel laughed with Jonathan near the grill. Linda cradled another baby, Melissa's second, while Rachel reflected on how much had changed. Melissa joined her, offering lemonade and a sincere apology that no longer needed explaining. They weren't perfect sisters, but they were honest ones now. Rachel's business had grown, but so had her life beyond it. She worked with purpose and rested without guilt. When Linda admitted she had been wrong to measure happiness by milestones, Rachel believed her. That evening, as the sun set, Rachel realized her life hadn't unfolded late or incorrectly. It had unfolded deliberately. Pain had shaped it. Patience had protected it. Love had arrived when it fit, not when it was demanded. And standing there, surrounded by a family that finally felt chosen as much as given, Rachel knew she wouldn't change a thing. In the weeks that followed the backyard gathering, Rachel found herself reflecting less on what had hurt her in the past and more on what she had learned from it. The baby shower that once felt like a public humiliation had become a turning point rather than a wound. It had forced her to confront patterns she had quietly endured for years: silence, comparison, and the instinct to shrink to keep peace. Now, those patterns no longer fit. Rachel moved through her days with a steadier sense of self, no longer rehearsing explanations for her life. She noticed the change in small ways: how she spoke more openly in meetings, how she no longer flinched at questions about the future, how she trusted her instincts without apology. Daniel never asked her to be different, and Lily never questioned her place. That quiet acceptance reinforced something Rachel had always known but rarely allowed herself to believe: her life did not need external validation to be meaningful. It only needed to feel true. Wedding plans unfolded slowly and intentionally. Rachel and Daniel chose simplicity over spectacle, deciding on a small ceremony that reflected who they were rather than what was expected. Lily took her role seriously, offering opinions on flowers and insisting butterflies be part of the day. Melissa helped when asked, careful now, respectful of boundaries she once ignored. Their relationship wasn't rewritten overnight, but it was no longer defined by rivalry. It was defined by honesty. Linda and Robert watched their daughters differently now, no longer ranking their choices, no longer measuring success by the same ruler. Rachel noticed how her parents listened more than they spoke, how pride replaced concern. The shift was subtle but lasting. It didn't erase the past, but it softened it, allowing space for something healthier to grow. As summer faded into fall, Rachel moved into Daniel's house, not as a surrender of independence, but as a deliberate choice. She kept her loft, not out of fear, but out of respect for the woman she had been when she built it. Their home became a blend of old and new, grief and hope, intention and spontaneity. Lily flourished in the stability, thriving in a household built on patience and mutual care. Rachel continued growing her business, hiring help when needed, no longer equating exhaustion with worth. Balance replaced survival. The life she lived now wasn't louder or more impressive than before, it was simply fuller. Every piece of it felt earned. On a quiet evening months later, Rachel stood alone in the garden Daniel and Lily had first invited her into, the same place where everything had shifted. The flowers were in bloom, butterflies hovering near the milkweed. She thought about the woman she had been that day, angry, hurt, doubting, and felt compassion rather than regret. That version of herself had done the best she could with what she knew then. Growth hadn't come from proving anyone wrong. It had come from choosing herself repeatedly until the right people found her without effort or compromise. Rachel understood now that life didn't reward speed or conformity. It rewarded honesty. On the day of her wedding, Rachel didn't feel like she was arriving late to anything. She felt exactly on time. Standing beside Daniel, with Lily smiling proudly nearby, surrounded by family who finally saw her clearly, Rachel felt a quiet certainty settle in her chest. Her life had not followed the expected order, but it had followed truth. Pain had shaped her, patience had steadied her, and love had met her where she stood. As she took Daniel's hand, Rachel knew this was not a reward for waiting or enduring, it was the result of choosing authenticity over fear. And that, she realized, had made all the difference. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt judged for choosing your own timeline, remember this: your journey is valid, exactly as it is. Don't let anyone rush your becoming. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. It's completely free, and it helps this channel grow. And feel free to tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Until next time, trust your timing, and keep choosing yourself.